World Cup, but that era has kind of ended. Can they reinvent themselves this time around?
I think they're entirely capable of having one last go. And I think when I look at these teams, I wonder if maybe this isn't one side that we're slightly giving short shrift to in general. Obviously, people have them among the favorites, but maybe not at the very, very top. And again, you look at the things you look for. You have the experience. You can still squeeze out another high-level World Cup from Piqué and Sergio Ramos. You have one of the very, very best shutdown goalkeepers in the world, and David De Gea. You've got these wonderful guys like Marco Asensio who are coming through and can change things, and Isco as well. I wouldn't. It's not a team that I think anybody would want to face in the group stages.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Madrid in September when they beat Italy in the qualifiers. Sorry,
it was Italy. Come on,
3-0.
The worst Italian team ever.
And the first 4, yeah. Okay.
3-0, I think it was.
It was pretty emphatic, and that night it was almost like Spain are back and are a contender again. Now, I still think the Germans and Brazil are probably ahead of them, but like Gab said, they've got some great quality.
But how often do we see it, Mark, that a lot of times the guys who are real breakout guys at the World Cup are people who have quiet seasons or they come back from injury and they just kind of start getting fit in April?
Well, Costa last time went there with a hamstring, didn't he? And he never really recovered after the Champions League final. So if he goes in fit, then it'll make a big difference.
And he was getting the treatment from the fans, wasn't he, as well?
They can also play
having
without,
jumped ship, so to speak.
Yeah.
They can also play without a proper striker. They've done that so many times before with the force number 9.
What about this political hot potato with the Catalan thing and the independence? Might that heighten the tensions among the players if they're together for 6 weeks or so? Is that a factor at all?
We've been there before.
Yeah.
We've had this issue, and I think Xavi and Casillas back in the day spoke about this quite eloquently, saying they're the same age, came through the ranks together. We stand for different things, but we're going to get together and we're going to rule the world, and they did.
Eventually, but I think there were a few Spain teams before, weren't there, where the Real, Barca.
But I think if you look at the leadership though, of this team, this is Piqué and Sergio Ramos' team.
Yeah.
And as much as those two guys love to wind each other up on social media, they've been there, they've done that, they have the T-shirt. To me, that's less of a concern. Maybe what can be more of a concern, I'm not 100% sold on Lopetegui in the sense that he's a younger manager. Some of the veterans, you don't want to get in a situation where you've got the veterans in the squad who are maybe pulling for certain players in certain situations who they like more, perhaps at the expense of some younger players or some outsiders. I think that's where Lopetegui could be tested a little bit.
Which is why they probably need a quick start rather than the slow start that they had, for example, in 2010, because that's when your manager will get second guessed. That's when the power play in the dressing room starts, when people are saying, well, we lost or we drew because this guy isn't playing, and the other guy says, no, but this guy has to play. And I think
they got hammered 5-1, didn't they, first game up?
Well, and Gabi is right. And also in 2010 they didn't have a good start.
They lost to Switzerland in 2010 and 2014. Although Switzerland game they dominated.
But still,
2014 was
it was nice to have Del Bosque there rather than an untested, fairly novice manager. So I think that could be a concern. But then
they start with Portugal, don't they?
In terms of the quality of the team, they have very few peers. I think that, you said that Germany and Brazil are slightly ahead of them. I'm not even sure. I think Spain just plays such a breathtakingly
Brazil and Germany
football
ahead because of the respective managers and Löw and Chichi. Maybe that's.
But Lopetegui has the advantage to have had a lot of those players in the Spain youth team before, where they did so well, and I think he would have worked with a lot of them before. He would have managed, maybe not in an environment as pressured as the World Cup, but.
But that's the thing, though, right? You've got your guys who you've won with at youth level, coming up the guys who've won everything and who are the veterans in the dressing room.
It's also the last World Cup for Andres Iniesta and Sergio Busquets, and I just think we should enjoy it the last time, however long it lasts, whether they go all the way or they stop in the quarterfinal or semi-final, but just for the last time, just enjoy those two guys.
They've got a good group as well. They should come through that group fairly straightforward. Portugal, for me, well, like I said, they weren't the best team in the Euros, so I think Spain will win that group, and then the path will open up. And I
I've
think
got a feeling that's going to be a 0-0 draw. Spain-Portugal to start off with in that group.
It's always more complicated than it should be for Spain for some reason. There's almost kind of a reverse inferiority complex. I mean, they're so clearly so much better, but for some reason, because it's a derby and because Portugal are up for it, Spain seem to kind of freeze almost on the occasion at times. It's weird, but they should be really comfortable.
So contenders, yeah?
definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the verdict. Contenders.
Shaka Hislop joining me for our first transfer rater in our new fancy studios. Shaka, we have some time before the World Cup, so you know those rumors have started flying. Let's start off with this one that has been taking some headlines in the last couple of weeks. Neymar to Real Madrid. Dare he?
By all accounts, his dad has been sounding out the possibility of that move to Real Madrid. I'll be honest. I think this is less about Neymar and more about PSG. They invested too much in him. They don't want to let him go, not this summer anyway. Maybe next summer I see that being more realistic, but not 2018.
Moving on now, Willian to Man United. This one has been floating around as well, and I'm a fan of it. What do you think? Hit or miss?
You should be a fan of it as a Manchester United fan. Willian is an outstanding
Yep.
player and clearly not happy with how he's been used this season under Antonio Conte. He's got 2 years left on his contract, so if Chelsea want to get best value for him, they need to sell now, otherwise the ball is squarely in his court. But I'm going to put this down as a miss for now, simply because we still don't know who the Chelsea manager will be to start the new season. Maybe things change in that regard. As much sense as it makes for Willian and Manchester United, I just think the uncertainty at Stamford Bridge makes that a miss for the time being.
Speaking of not being happy, Robert Lewandowski, we know exactly his unhappy situation at Bayern. His agent has gotten involved and such delights. Do you think he's burnt his bridges at Bayern, and could that possibly open up a move to Chelsea?
Lewandowski has been linked with a move for quite some time, last 12, 18 months. But more to the point, Real Madrid. Chelsea, I just don't see, again, because of the uncertainty at Stamford Bridge, a player like Robert Lewandowski will have his options, they'll be endless, probably by the end of the summer. Right now, I don't think he needs to jump into making that decision, especially given that you don't know who the manager will be in August.
All right, moving on now. A lot of unhappiness surrounding Anthony Martial, both for club and country. We know his relationship. He's not going to Russia, so he's got a lot of time to think about his future. So could he move to Tottenham, of all places, and leave Man United?
But clearly out of favour at Manchester United, will be looking for pastures new. You fully understand that. And here's the thing that makes this almost both a hit and a miss. He's exactly the type of player that Pochettino has signed, which would make it a hit. But Spurs haven't a surplus of that type of player, that type of midfielder.
But they need something,
may-
Shaka.
maybe they-
Still no silverware.
Still no silverware, yes, but I think there are other issues to that. I'll put this down as a hit because of seeing him fit in, and as similar as he is to many of the players that Spurs have on their books, maybe they need an out-and-out wide man, and Martial certainly is that.
And finally, this one that made us all chuckle. Shaka, you can tell me if there could be any sort of hit involved in this. Gigi Buffon leaving Juventus, as we know. Liverpool, would that be a good destination?
Look, I think any number of clubs would be happy to have Buffon, and as much as I think Liverpool do need a goalkeeper in the long term, I just don't think Gigi Buffon, not this 40-year-old Gigi Buffon, is the answer for Liverpool. I'm sorry, I put that down as a miss as well.
All right, thanks so much. Shaka hits up there. So only one hit, and that's Anthony Martial. Definitely, he has to answer a lot of questions.
I had to massage that hit.
You had to massage that hit, and it's only temporary. We'll see exactly what happens. Continue tracking everything here at ESPNFC.com. There is a changing of the guard at West Ham, and you know whenever anything West Ham happens, we have to call it West Ham legend himself, Shaka Hislop. Shaka's here with me. Manuel Pellegrini signing a 3-year contract to take over as West Ham manager. Shaka, if we have a look at his stats now, we know that, of course, we know him quite well from when he managed Manchester City, won the Premier League title with them. He's also managed at Real Madrid, so some pretty decent pedigree in his managerial career. So how are you feeling about this one?
I'm excited about this appointment. I think my issue with David Moyes and West Ham is it was just never a fit. The way he plays football and the way West Ham have prided themselves on throughout their history. It was a mismatch. But Pellegrini showed, certainly in his lengthy career, not just at Manchester City or at Real Madrid, but more to the point at Villarreal, that he can get results playing the way West Ham, the Ron Greenwood way, as West Ham fans would allude to. So I think culturally and stylistically, it's a perfect match. And I, for one, am excited by this appointment.
What kind of style then do we expect, and where does he start? Because we know that West Ham have been flirting with danger a little too close for your comfort in the last couple of Premier League seasons, and now it seems that with Pellegrini they want a sort of, not a permanent fix, but at least a somewhat long-term fix with the 3-year contract. So what kind of style do we see him bringing about, and what area does he tackle first?
I think you know what you're going to get from Pellegrini in terms of style. I think the challenge for Pellegrini is refreshing this current squad to be able to play that type of football, because you look at West Ham squad and you could almost understand their struggles. Now, I like Adrian as a goalkeeper, and I don't think that needs addressing right now. In midfield, again, I think West Ham are well looked after. I think they, outside of Mark Noble, who's been absolutely fantastic and still has another 3 or 4 years left in him, but Mark is now 31 years old. I played with Mark Noble, to put things in perspective.
Don't age yourself.
Well, don't age Mark Noble, more to the point. But you look at West Ham squad, and I made some notes. There are 3 strikers: Arnautovic, Carroll, Chicharito, all 29 years old. At the back, Evra was brought in as a short-term appointment. 37 years old, I don't expect him to resign. Winston Reid, 29. Zabaleta, 37. Zabaleta still has another year to go on his contract. Ogbonna, 29. Cresswell, 28. Only Masuaku at 24 was the only fairly regular player that is at the age you could see Pellegrini working with in the long term. So I know he's come out and said he knows the squad well. He feels they're 4, 5, maybe 6 signings away from competing at the level that West Ham fans want to see them do. But I think it takes more than that, not because of the personalities, or I don't mean that as a criticism of the players, but certainly their ages. And if you want to play the type of football, if you want to compete at the higher ends of the Premier League, you need a younger player base to call on. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the short term.
All right, well, we refuse to let Shaka Hislop go to take up, the post of West Ham manager. So Manuel Pellegrini has taken it up, and Shaka Hislop is excited about it.
No, I mean, it was a wonderful feeling. I mean, as a kid my age, such a young age, to be able to, say I'm going to be able to play Champions League next year, and to have the season that we did have, it was very emotional and very lively, I guess you can say. So to be a part of a group like that, with a lot of people not believing that we probably would finish second in the league, it was an amazing feeling. No, I mean, it's always a good thing to be able to get caps under your belt and then come in, and I mean, I'm still one of the new guys, but I feel like I have a lot of experience just from playing over in Europe. So just come here and give my best and see what happens.
It was a good end to the season. We qualified for the Europa League, so that's important for the club and for the players. We were fighting for something important, and personally for me it was great getting the game-winning goal. I thought I had a long season with a lot of games, so I feel fit, I feel sharp, I feel much more better and improved as a player, and now I get to bring it all into camp and try to make an impact here with the national team and just continue to try to establish myself here. It was an important chapter for me in my career where I was an important player for the club, and we won the cup, first trophy ever at the club's history, and then qualified for Europa League, which is important for the club. So it was 2 successful seasons, and now I'm happy to be a part of the national team and looking forward to the games coming up. Anytime you get a call up, it's a big honor, and it's something I take a lot of pride in. So every time I'm here, I want to show myself the best way I can, train hard, work hard, and hopefully everything falls into place.
Antoine Griezmann's numbers with Atletico Madrid since coming over from Real Sociedad, awfully impressive. And he may, in fact, be adding to these numbers. Jules, what can you tell us about the latest? Because we've now heard that Griezmann has told Atletico Madrid he would like to stay for another season. This totally contradicts everything else we've heard. What should we believe?
Yeah, I think it's all a bit confusing of what Antoine Griezmann is going to do next season. There's obviously, the link that Barcelona and him have built in the last few weeks and few months, and we know that they've been talking. We know that they've been very close of an agreement. If not, they've already found an agreement. And it seems, though, that he's struggling a bit to, make his mind over staying or leaving. I think part of him really would like to move to Barcelona, and who wouldn't, and play with Lionel Messi. And the other part of him is very happy in Madrid for Atletico, in the team that he's the leader of. He just won them the Europa League a few weeks ago, and he feels at home there. So I can see why he's a bit torn apart between the two. Personally, I think he's going to stay, but I can see why it's all a bit confusing right now. But we will know soon, because he said he will make an announcement before the start of the World Cup. So only a couple of weeks to go.
Griezmann's teammate with France, Paul Pogba, has come out and described his relationship with Jose Mourinho. Doesn't sound like everything's on the up and up there. Do you believe that Pogba's future will be at Old Trafford?
Yes, I do. I don't think many clubs can afford to buy him anyway. And I think he's happy at United. I don't think that's an issue. There was an issue with Mourinho earlier in the season, and we talked about it on the show a lot. Back in March, when Pogba went back with the national team in France, he had a long chat with Didier Deschamps, who told him at the time, focus on your football. Don't worry about your relationship with the manager. You don't have to be friends with the manager as long as there's a bit of respect and you do what he asks you to do, and then you deliver. And I think that's what Pogba did between March and the end of the season. Although, couldn't win the FA Cup final for them. But I think he did well and he delivered on the pitch. And that's what he said on French television this week, where those quotes come from. I thought he came out really well, and he said, I responded on the pitch from the criticism that I had from the manager. And I think he did that. And I don't see why it's a problem that they don't always get on, Mourinho and Pogba.
Jules, New York City FC's Patrick Vieira has been linked to Nice as a replacement for Favre. But at today's practice, Vieira said that there's been effectively no negotiations between the two sides. Yet what you just told us off camera is that the folks at Nice are singing a very different tune. Explain that.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's really, really weird, because Nice are briefing us that negotiations are very far ahead with them and Vieira, with them and New York City as well, that because he's out of contract in December, it shouldn't be a problem for them to release him and for him to go back to France, to Nice. The Nice CEO and the director traveled to New York last week to hold meetings with Vieira in New York City as well. So it's really weird what he came out with on today. Maybe it was to sort of deflect a bit the attention, and by saying, no, nothing is going on, don't worry. Well, actually, a lot are going on. But I don't know, it's very confusing. But Nice are very, very confident that they're going to get him and that he will be the manager next season in Ligue 1.
Brian, on yesterday's show, Ale suggested that should Vieira leave New York City FC, Bruce Arena might be a good replacement. Would you hire Bruce for that job?
Listen, I think Bruce can do a job at any club, especially after the disappointment with the U.S. men's national team. But quite honestly, I don't know if Bruce would want it. I'm not sure Bruce is interested in getting back into the coaching side. So that's yet to be seen. I think the New York City, the NYCFC job is one that is very attractive to a lot of different people. You've got a great club, an organization that's put together very well. They have money that they spend. And you're in a setting that, although a baseball stadium right now, if they were to end up getting the stadium they want to build, gosh, what coach wouldn't want to be a part of that organization?
I don't know. There could be a lot of small reasons. It's hard to say exactly, but I think we put ourselves in a good spot, and we made a mistake in the final game, and that's how it went. We just weren't focused, weren't ready to come out and finish the job. So that's really all there was.
Brian, weren't focused. Is that on the senior players in the team, or is that on the coaching staff?
Well, I think everybody has to take some blame. First off, I mean, he continues to impress me. That can be a banana skin for a young player to say the wrong things. And he's right. I know he didn't definitely get into details, but he's right. There is no reason why the U.S. should not have been able to get at least a draw in that game. And you saw from the start of the game, they come out flat. And Trinidad saw that, took advantage of it. And when you put yourself in a situation where you think you're okay and all of a sudden get caught out, it's really tough to get refocused. And that's a big problem. And listen, we can go back to how things were before. There was certainly something wrong inside the chemistry of the team. Bruce seemed to get everybody back on it, but to have that game go the way it did, focused and being prepared, certainly has a factor, a huge factor.
We're talking about the same thing we always talk about. Who will Arsenal's next manager be? Looks like it's going to be Unai Emery. Guys, take it away.
Thank you very much, Seb. We're in Independence Square here in Kiev, which over the next few days will become the focal point for Real Madrid and Liverpool fans travelling to the Champions League final. We'll, of course, be talking about that final in depth over the next couple of shows. But, Robbo, let's focus for the moment, shall we? Big news regarding your old team, Unai Emery. Do you like this?
I do, because for a long time I've been complaining that Arsenal haven't had a coach that's prepared the team well enough. They haven't looked at the opposition. They haven't been drilled on the training field. They don't know what they're doing defensively. The players play off the cuff. Unai Emery will come to Arsenal, and if he does come to Arsenal, he will make sure they know exactly what their jobs are. He's a methodical manager. He'll leave no stone unturned. He'll make sure that the players know what their jobs are, what the game plan is. He'll work day in, day out on the training field to get his ideas across and get his tactics across. So that point of view, I think he's the right choice.
You say he's methodical about his preparations, but take a look at what happened at PSG. Got a lot of criticism from the boys on the show regarding the fact he didn't take control of the Cavani-Neymar situation.
Different sort of players. He's not going to have that problem at Arsenal. There's got players there that he's got to control. He can go and manage Arsenal's players. They haven't got big names. That's been a criticism of Arsenal players. They haven't had any headstrong players that are going to challenge the manager. I don't think they're going to challenge Unai Emery either. So when he was at PSG, he had players that were hard to deal with. He didn't maybe want Neymar. He maybe didn't want the two to play together. So that was difficult for him. And I think he's the sort of manager that doesn't like confrontation with certain players. But he needs to be confrontational with these Arsenal players because that's what they haven't had for quite some while.
So with regards to expectations going into the start next season, what should they be for Arsenal? Obviously, he had so much success regarding the Europa League with Sevilla. Is that where we're at? Is that what Arsenal should be looking to achieve?
It depends what players they bring in, because I'm not sure he's going to be in charge of that. That's why they've got a person, head of recruitment, to come in. We know from Borussia Dortmund, he's going to be in charge of most of the buying of players. And I think he's the sort of manager that doesn't worry too much about what's going on in terms of the buying of the players. He's quite easy. He's not going to control the board and say he's demand more players. But what he has to do is make sure he gets the tactics right. And I think Arsenal have got to be looking to get back into the top four and maybe a cup. They're not going to challenge for the Premier League title this year.
Mikel Arteta, of course, is the big favourite leading up to, 24 hours ago, pretty much. You weren't sure of this appointment.
Definitely not sure of this appointment if he was going to get it.
Did they bottle it? Did they go for the easy option in Unai Emery? That seems to be the suggestion from some Arsenal fans.
I would say they were going for the easy option with Mikel Arteta, in my view, because he's somebody that apparently he's been challenging them. He wanted more and more from the board, more assurances from the board in terms of players coming in, who he could have on his staff, players that he wanted maybe out of the club. Unai Emery's not going to challenge the board on that front. But he had no experience, and it's a massive change from being a head coach to then going and being the manager. Well, you've got to come up with a game plan. You've got to change things on the pitch. All the time he's under Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola determines the tactics. He's the one that goes out on the training field, and he might say to Mikel Arteta, I want you to coach this, I want you to do that. Until you're the manager, you never have to worry about those things. When things start to go wrong after 20 minutes, do you trust yourself to make the right decisions? In my view, because Mikel Arteta hadn't had the experience of being a manager, he hadn't even run a youth team, he hadn't even run a reserve side where he had to make those decisions, he would have been the wrong choice in my view.
But Arsenal fans will say, but it was good that it was having an old Arsenal boy in charge. Now, a little bit of that has died with Arsene Wenger going, and Unai Emery's got no connection with the club. It's just losing a bit of its identity.
Well, we don't know who the assistant manager is going to be just yet. Steve Bold might still be there. I'll be
how do you get Steve Bold into this conversation?
Surprised if he does stay there. And why should you have an ex-Arsenal player? I don't understand why you have to have an ex-Arsenal player on the coaching, or an ex-Liverpool, or an ex-Chelsea. Chelsea do it quite often. They did it with the late Ray Wilkins quite often. I don't see why you have to have that. You need somebody to come in, bring his own people with him, and start again, because Arsenal need a real freshen up.
Stuart Robson, as always, thank you very much. Back to you in the studio, Seb.
Thanks, guys. Here's a look at Emery's recent resume. Of course, kind of rose to prominence during that 4-year stretch at Valencia, brief spell at Spartak Moscow, 3 straight Europa League titles with Sevilla, and then the 2 years at PSG. Nobody watched more of Emery's PSG squads than our Julien Laurent. Jules, what do you make of Arsenal's decision to make Emery their next manager?
I think it's a very interesting one. I can see on one hand why some of the fans are a bit underwhelmed by him. I get that. But I can see on the other hand why he's ticking a lot of the boxes that Arsenal wanted him to tick. I think they, have the very rigorous process to appoint a new manager. I think they went for who they thought was the best. No one turned them down. They just picked Emery ahead of everyone else because they were convinced by him. They were impressed by him when they interviewed him. And they really believe he's the right guy for the job to succeed Arsene Wenger. He's, like Sjoerd said, he's a very hard-working coach. He's not a manager. He's not going to get involved in transfers. He's not going to complain if he doesn't have enough players or if not enough money spent. He will only focus on the training field to work with the player he has, the player he's given, to improve them like he did in Paris, like he did in Sevilla, where him and Monchi worked so well for those years where they won all those Europa Leagues. And I think that's very interesting. Tactically, he's a very astute manager. We saw that with PSG. Yes, he made mistakes there many times, and we said that. And he had a problem with the egos in the dressing room, but there's no superstars in the Arsenal dressing room. Mesut Ozil is the only one, maybe, but in Paris he had plenty of superstars and he couldn't deal with him. I think this context is different and Arsenal suits him far more than what PSG did.
Brian, if the point is to get better, is this really an upgrade over Arsene Wenger?
Well, it depends on what type of upgrade you're looking at. Are you looking at for somebody that's going to inject a different attitude or a different idea? I think you're getting that with Unai Emery. The guys have talked about the tactical switches that he makes. He determines the opponent and actually coaches to that point. And that hasn't happened with Arsenal. The one thing I'll say is to get better, they need to get better defensively. They need to have somebody that's going to be in that back line that it will boss people around. And that is something that Arsenal hasn't had. Whether even if it's not a center back, if it's the defensive center midfielder, somebody that's really going to set the tone. For Arsenal, it's been too easy, in my opinion. They've allowed teams to have too much of the ball at different times. Even though they love the ball, they didn't disrupt enough games, and they need a disruptor in that team.
Look, I think the comparison between Unai Emery and Arsene Wenger is an unfair one. Arsene Wenger at his absolute best, yes, you have Arsene Wenger over Unai Emery. But I think Arsene Wenger went well past his best, which is why you saw the regression in results for Arsenal Football Club. Now you need somebody who can get you back to those past glories. And I think Unai Emery has shown that he can do that. Got Valencia back into the Champions League despite Valencia having severe financial difficulties at the time. Kind of wrote his name into Europa League history, as it were, with Sevilla. And now, okay, the animal that PSG was and continues to be, totally different from where Arsenal are right now. Different dressing room, different demands. I think Unai Emery is the man who can get Arsenal back to where their fans believe they should be.
Jules, direct question here. Do you believe in 2 years Unai Emery will still be in charge at Arsenal?
Yes, I do. And you know what? I also think that his style of football is far more suited to the Premier League and to Arsenal than Arsene Wenger's style was. He's closer to Jurgen Klopp in a way that he likes verticality, high intensity, high pressing. And that's not what Arsenal were under Arsene Wenger. They were playing sideways, short passes for a long spell of time, and they didn't have that intensity that the Premier League requires right now, that football right now requires. And we see that with Klopp, we see that with Guardiola, we see that with Pochettino. And I think it's good that Arsenal are bringing that to their squad now. And like we said, the players have to get on board. They were not so on board at PSG. Let's hope that Arsenal players will get on board with what Unai Emery has to offer to them.
There's a report out there that Thomas Tuchel and Neymar met and that sparks flew. Are you sleeping a little bit easier now at night? You think Neymar may indeed stay at PSG?
So much. I believe in love again. I believe in love again. That was pure love. He flew over on purpose from Germany just to meet Neymar 10 days ago. And apparently they hit it straight away. And Neymar liked what he heard from Tuchel. Tuchel, who is quite a charismatic, seducing guy, in fairness, said the right things clearly. And what he said to Neymar, there's no magic. He said, listen, I want you to get the ball as close to the opposition's goal as possible. Whereas that last season under Emery, Neymar felt he had to drop deep, quite deep, to get the ball, and then obviously if he got the ball on the halfway line, it was far from the opposition goal. Tuchel said, my aim is to get you the ball as close as the goal from possible, so then you can work your magic in there. And obviously Neymar likes that, because that means he doesn't have to defend too much, doesn't have to drop too much, doesn't have to trail back too much either. So I can see why they got on. But let's not get carried away. Let's see when we get to the season and when Tuchel is unhappy with something Neymar has done or has said, and see how it goes. But it was a very good start between them two.
Jules, sticking with PSG, we're hearing reports of a big money offer for Gigi Buffon. As a PSG fan, do you like it?
I like the fact that they're looking for leaders, and that they want that kind of character and that kind of charisma in their dressing room. I've got no problem with that. The problem I have is that he will turn 41 soon, that he's not the keeper he used to be. And even if you look at what Thomas Tuchel's style of football is, he plays with a very high defensive line and with a sweeper keeper. Gigi Buffon is not a sweeper keeper. He's never been and will never be. So I find it a bit strange that Tuchel is okay with the fact that Buffon would come and you would think become the number one when you've got Kevin Trapp, who's far more suited for Tuchel's style of football, and even Areola, who is far more of a sweeper keeper than Buffon, like we said, ever was. So I'm a bit lost on that one. I can see on one hand why, but on the other hand, it makes no sense for Tuchel to have Buffon in. And it reminds me of what happened to Casillas when he went to Porto, where it was not so much of a success. So I'm a bit mixed feelings about it, really.
Shaka, does this improve PSG for you?
No, it doesn't. Listen, I love Buffon. Everybody knows exactly how highly I rate Gigi Buffon. But if you were talking about winning the Champions League, which is PSG's aim, Buffon now, a 40-year-old, soon to be 41-year-old Gigi Buffon, is not the answer. And if you're going to spend a lot of money on a goalkeeper, I think it'd be better spent elsewhere.
Right?
I think this has to do with something about financial fair play, in the sense that why not go out and buy somebody? If you really wanted that keeper, you can buy Thibaut Courtois. You can buy somebody who's in the prime of their career. Having said that, the one thing I will say about Buffon is he seems to make the big saves in the big moments, and he doesn't make the mistakes that some young goalkeepers make. So. I'm a bit torn myself. I want to see him. I'd love to see him win the Champions League, but it just doesn't make complete sense to me.
Jules, do you believe that we'll actually see Buffon in Paris next year?
Yes, I do. I think he will take that 2-year deal with it's a lot of money. And Brian is right on financial fair play. They can't afford, with the position they want to strengthen, which is the defensive midfielder and the left back as well, they can't go and spend 60 or 80 million euros on Oblak or Courtois or Donnarumma. And it's appealing that Buffon is free. Yes, he will have, big money in terms of wages, but there's no transfer fee to be paid. And I think they're very aware of that. And that's why maybe it's another plus in why they would sign him.
So let's compare just how PSG have done to how Gigi Buffon's Juve teams have done. And there you see it. PSG, a couple of quarterfinal appearances, but more famously out in the round of 16 last couple years. Meanwhile, Juve knocked out in the quarterfinal this year, but trips to the final in 2015 and 2017. All right, we made it into extra time. Shaka, Brian, Seb here in the studio, Julien Laurent, he'll join us as well throughout. Let's get right to the questions. Actually, first, yesterday you promised us you were going to bring in the scorecard from your round of golf with Ale.
Ali had the scorecard.
Sure he did.
I had the scorecard.
Did you wear the glasses
Very
while you
conveniently?
played?
I shot 6 under par.
Yeah, right. 3 holes in?
6 under par.
At some point.
The scorecard will show us much.
Was it putt-putt?
That's all I'm saying. The scorecard will prove me right.
Miniature golf.
Tom's got a good question here, and I think a tough one. He wants to know, who's the most shocking omission so far from the World Cup?
Nangolan.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Who you got?
That's a good question. I could say.
Does the whole country count? USA.
How long have you been sitting on that one? Since October 10th?
That one never gets old.
I
enjoyed that for 4 years.
The fact that Spain only took 3 forwards and Morata wasn't a part of it, maybe.
I like that one. Jules, how about you? Who's your biggest World Cup omission?
I think Mauro Icardi. I mean, how there's no room. I know Argentina are blessed with great forwards and great strikers. I'm not disputing that, but Icardi again had an incredible season with Inter, and qualifying them for the Champions League, and for him not to make that squad, I think is really, really tough. Really tough.
I think the better topic is for being together for a longer period of time. This is where I think chemistry comes in and is essential that you have that. That's why England didn't make it.
Okay.
That possibly could be why Icardi didn't make it.
Do you have a Twitter account? Do you have a Twitter account?
I believe so.
Well, if you didn't like this topic, you could tweet the topic in.
No. I'm good. I like the topic. I'm just saying that I think there's a deeper question or a fun thing to talk about.
The one thing we do is deep. We go,
Oh, yeah.
Extra time, we go deep.
Speaking of Icardi and Argentina, Jordy says yesterday Xhaka said Argentina will be the biggest flop in the World Cup. The Xhaka curse, which I didn't know about, will flip that around and Argentina will win it. You heard it here first. Xhaka, what other things have you cursed? I didn't know about this Xhaka curse.
Now, whenever I make a prediction,
it's wrong.
Put your mortgage on the opposite.
Okay.
I remember you did pick the U.S. over Trinidad.
Did he?
Yes.
No, we're back there again.
I know, I'm sorry.
I've gotten better, but saying that, it couldn't be much worse.
It's fair enough.
Yeah.
Tyler wants to know, help me put this to bed. Who is the best center back in Europe? Stevie would say Sergio Ramos. No, he wouldn't. Chiellini, okay. Brian, you got a suggestion?
Best center back.
Hold on, think about it.
Inzaghi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jules, what about you? Who's your best center back in Europe?
On this season, based on this season, I will go for Umtiti at Barcelona, and not because he's French, not because he's French, or not just because he's French. I think he's been amazing. I really do. Not so much towards the end of the season. He had an injury, but before that, I thought he was a real star for Barcelona.
Do you think he's better than Varane, Jules? Or at least this season?
On this season, yes. Different profile of centre backs, different players. They will play together for France at the World Cup, so it'll be interesting to see them together. Although we've seen that a little bit before, but yeah, I think on this season he's been better, and he had to carry more Piqué. Whereas I still feel that Ramos still carries a bit more Varane.
No votes for Virgil van Dijk. Had a big impact. Big impact.
Yep. Yeah.
Jason wants to know if you were I love these hypotheticals. If you were the chairman of a Premier League club and had your choice, would you buy Salah or Kane? Brian, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that because Salah is more adaptable in different positions, I would take Salah. Listen, I love Harry Kane, and I think finding a central out-and-out striker is a very difficult thing to do these days, but the way Salah can morph into different positions, cause problems by dropping in, I'd probably do Salah.
You don't worry about him being unable to replicate what he did this season?
Well, everybody said that about Kane. I mean, and Kane's been able to do it. I don't see why Salah can't.
If I had to make a choice right now, yeah, I'd go with Salah. That's a tough choice.
Yeah. Jules, who you got?
I'll go for Kane, simply for the point that you made and that Brian made as well. But is that Kane has done it on many seasons now, and Salah is the first one, and as amazing as he was, and I really hope for him and for Liverpool that he can do it again. He hasn't done it again, so no one is sure that he can do it again. So I pick Kane on that consistency over the last few years, scoring tons of goals.
Xhaka, we didn't get to this in the show. You're a former Hammer of the Year. You didn't like the David Moyes hire. What do you think of Manuel Pellegrini?
I love it. I think it's a great signing for West Ham. the way Pellegrini plays football, I think the authority that he'll bring to that dressing room, he's got his hands full. It's an aging squad, especially at the back. These three forwards they have on their books are all 29 years old, so it needs refreshing. But I think what West Ham fans expect out of their team and what Pellegrini can bring is a very good match.
Jules, do you agree with Xhaka on Pellegrini?
Yeah, I think very good choice. Great style of football. What the West Ham fans want. If he can get the money that he needs to rebuild that squad, like Xhaka said, he can be very promising for next season.
How do you feel about Xhaka downing David Moyes?
I know, it hurt. It hurt. Listen, Moyes kept you guys up, and
thank you.
It might not have been the prettiest, but I think
it definitely wasn't the prettiest.
But with the squad you have, and with the parity in the bottom half of the table, I think he did a good job.
Would you want to see Moyes back at Everton?
Listen, I think I can't speak highly enough of David Moyes. I know that he's run into some tough spots. Certainly, I'm sure looking back on some of the decisions he's made in certain positions, he would change. But the knowledge he has, the ability, I think, to relate but also motivate players. From my time with him,
so is that a yes?
I'm very happy to see him at any club.
Is that a yes back at Everton?
I'd love him back at Everton.
Okay, just making sure. It was you were dancing around the answer, but I was making sure.
What I was trying to say is I think he can do a job at any club.
Okay.
Hislop.
Yeah.
Trying to take my job here?
No, I was waiting. I was just, I was hanging on every
You didn't
word.
want me to be on the
I
fence.
was hanging on. I nearly fell off my chair and everything.
That's what I was trying to do. Just
Xhaka, are you back tomorrow?
Nah, I'm off tomorrow.
I'm not back tomorrow. So, Brian, you should probably do the promo for tomorrow's show.
Go on then, Brian. So you're
listen, I don't want to take your job. As you
some days you can have
he is touchy. He's a little touchy, isn't he? Oh, goodness me. Oh.
The show will be back tomorrow. Build up to the Champions League final continues in Kiev. SPI has Real Madrid as a slight favorite over Liverpool, as do the odds makers. Earlier in the show, you heard from Dan and Stu. They're joined now by Gab Marconi for the actual reason they're in Ukraine.
Food.
Game.
Thank you very much, Seb. Well, it's become an annual tradition. They let me out of Bristol to come to the Champions League final. And you look at this, boys. I think of all the ones we've covered over recent years, this is certainly the one where there seems to be more excitement, certainly from a neutral's point of view of what we can expect.
Well, because there's two teams that play great attacking football. I don't think Real Madrid have been at their best this year, but they've been involved in some great Champions League games. And Liverpool, when they counter-attack and they play that pressing game, and there's all areas of the pitch where there's going to be great tactical battles, which we can talk about later. But there's some key battles. And I would say Salah. How are Real Madrid going to deal with Salah? How are Liverpool going to deal with Marcelo going the other way? That's a key battle. Casemiro, if he plays, I think Liverpool will press him and press him and press him, because on the ball, he's not very good, and he's the player that could keep giving the ball away, and Firmino kept on running off him. That could be another key battle.
Gab, you think in your basement with your 4 TV screens and all the dross you watch over the season, this should be absolutely brilliant, shouldn't it?
I think so, Dan. I mean, these aren't necessarily the two best teams in Europe, but they're two teams that on the night when everything's clicking, I think they're almost about as fun to watch as anybody. And the fact that we know that Liverpool are going to attack Real Madrid, and it's going to be so fascinating to see how does Zidane react to it. So many attacking options, so many combinations, especially in that front three. It's going to be fascinating.
It really is. You talk about Salah and Ronaldo. It was interesting. Zidane was talking about it today. Obviously, he wouldn't swap the two. But these are two superstars who are going to be very much the focal points of this match.
Yeah, I think that Salah might suit Real Madrid, because I think Marcelo will go forward, and Ramos, who is one of the best defenders at saying, OK, I'll deal with this. He'll just let Marcelo push on, and Ramos will try and deal with Salah. Salah's great strength has been running in between a fullback and a centre-half, and neither are quite sure how to pick him up. In this game, I think Ramos will just say, I'll pick him up, I'll deal with him, we'll go from there.
Meet the other end, you've got Ronaldo. A little bit of a dip in form over recent weeks, but this is, of course, a stage in which he normally shines.
Yeah, and you have Ronaldo with a dip in form. You've got Gareth Bale with a real spike in form as well.
Doesn't make a difference, though, does it?
Well, you think he's not going to start?
Of course, he's could have scored 20 goals at the weekend. It wouldn't have made any difference, but Zidane knows his starting 11.
You know what? I'm not 100% sure on that. We've seen Zidane, come up with surprises in the past, and you look at the 11 that played in the last week of the season, other than obviously the goalkeeper, and you could get a sense: might this be what he's plotting? Certainly would be very.
But it's tried
awkward.
and tested, isn't it? You take a look: PSG, Juventus, Bayern, all without Bale.
It's true, but this is a different team. It's a different context. Obviously, you can also turn to Benzema. You can turn to Asensio as well. But, in terms of riding the form guy, the idea of Bale running the space if the fullbacks get forward, I think that's got to have its allure as well. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Sounds like
the interesting thing was when they were he was asked about Gareth Bale being fit and good to see him scoring goals. He said, "Yeah, it's great to see him." He then went on to say, "But it's great that Isco's fit as well, so that I can have a full team to pick from." Isco will play, surely.
Thank you very much, boys. Of course, plenty of speculation to come over the next few days. Be sure to stay with us. But for now, back to you in the studio.
So the guys seem to think this is going to be a thriller, but finals tend to be a little bit more cagey than that. Julian, I'll start with you. What do you expect on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm with you with the caginess of some finals, but if you look at them, at those two teams, it's hard to believe it's going to end up like 0-0 and penalties or just 1-0 wins somewhere, because Liverpool only know how to play by attacking, and that Real Madrid is just so good going forward as well. I think for me the most fascinating is what Zidane is going to do, what formation he's going to play. Will he go 4-3-3 as they've played so many times before? Will he play Isco as a number 10 behind Benzema and Ronaldo and the three midfield behind him? Will he play flat 4-4-2 with Vasquez and Asensio as two wingers with that width that can prevent Robertson and Alexander-Arnold to go forward for Liverpool? It's fascinating, I think, tactically, the battle between Zidane and Klopp.
Shaka, what do you see more here? Cracker or a tactical stalemate?
I think it's a cracker. It can only be. Look, Real Madrid can play any which way. Liverpool only know one way to play. It'll be a cracker.
It'll be two pretty exciting teams who've taken fairly different paths as we look at their records through the Champions League. Most of the numbers, at least statistically, favor Liverpool. We await kickoff on Saturday. Most of us won't be. ESPN.
Why you make that song? Why are you so aggressive with even that?
What do you mean aggressive? I'm just saying.